Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Hi, this is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today is Kristin Walker. With over 30 years volunteering and working in mental health, she's the CEO of a podcast network, Mental Health Radio Network, and she offers commentary on personality disorders, narcissism, entrepreneurship, mental and behavioral health, animal-assisted therapy, and the list goes on and on. My goodness, do you sleep at all? Do you rest at all? What do you do?
I do. I get sleep now, yes.
Now, in the early days, not so much, right?
No, starting the network last year, didn't get much sleep.
What a terrific network. I was spending some time with it, looking at it today, and you have just so many great things available to people. Let's talk about that. What was the impetus to start the network, and how does it work?
Well, I never imagined in a million years that I would create a network, but actually at the end of 2016, a few of my guests came to me and said, we don't know what we're doing, and you seem like you do. Will you produce podcasts for us and create a network? And I said, no. Are you kidding? Why would anyone want to do that?
In their right mind. Hello, I work on behavioral health. The answer is no.
Exactly. But I took it on, and I thought, okay, well, we officially started the network in February of 2017, and I thought, all right, well, it's mental health. We won't have a lot of people interested in doing podcasts about some piece of mental health. So if I have 5 shows by the end of 2017, I'll be really happy about that. And by August, we had 18.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm just looking at the list here where people can listen in, and it's like, 18, 20, just a very, very subject matter. So it's interesting. So were you doing podcasts originally? Is that, and they were guests that discovered you? And
yeah, I started with my podcast, Mental Health News Radio, and that's been going on for 4 years. And I did that as a hobby. I never expected to get paid to do it. I thought, my grandma would be listening, and I have a business consulting firm in mental health, so that paid those bills. And then I started having other organizations in mental health that are in the business side of things come to me and say, hey, we'd like you to do a commercial about us on your show. How much would it cost? And I went, I have no idea.
$27 million.
Exactly. And I had a few companies come to me that I handed me big checks, and I shook my hand as I handed those checks back and then thankfully I did that because a couple of them got sued for some pretty awful things after the fact. So, it's one of those things where I funded this all myself. I don't owe anyone any money, and it's doing a lot of good in the world.
Well, and that's the point of it, isn't it? Everybody came to you for a reason, because you have the expertise, the ability, and now the confidence to make this happen. And keeping your integrity at the highest level possible has got to be one of the big reasons why this is so successful.
Well, thank you. Yes, keeping my integrity, because, boy, some people can be awfully charming.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to go, ooh, okay, you're very, very charming, but something feels really off about this.
Yeah, here, meet my police officer, WWE wrestler, best friend, Bouncer. Let's see how you let's see how you work with him, right?
Hey, I had to do that with a former NFL player that was extremely charming, and man, I'm so glad I stopped being bedazzled by that and said, no, taking your shows down. Thanks, but no, you're not going to be part of what we're doing.
Good for you. Good for you. That must be a tough road to cross sometimes, is it? Or is it just pretty obvious?
No, it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons I talk about personality disorders is because I grew up with so many of them in my family, and so I know them very, very well, but that doesn't mean that they can't fool me. Right. So, as soon as you as soon as you create something that looks really shiny, like a network,
Right.
they'll come out of the woodwork because they want to, get some of that shine rubbed off on them.
Yeah, they
And
want that. They want that
yeah,
golden bullet. So,
yeah.
so what is, speaking of personality disorders, what is your experience? You mentioned your family, and how did all that work?
Yeah, I would say my both of my parents definitely are, on the spectrum, would be considered character disordered, and many aunts and uncles as well. So a lot of family upbringing brought in, really toxic behavior, and that became my normal. So I
Sure.
spent many years inviting and being very attracted to, someone does something inappropriate with me. Gosh, I must be in love with them.
Right. No, I understand. Yeah.
And then you learn, this isn't this, I don't want to be a part of this. And you learn where you're addicted to that behavior because that's what's familiar. And you do the work. I mean, I spent a lot of time in therapy, and then this show, I interviewed so many experts from around the globe about this subject. And that's been a huge part of my healing and realizing and training myself to not find them attractive.
Yeah, well,
And that's rough. That's a rough
got to be a
road.
rough road. I mean, we only know what we know from growing up, right? And I mean,
Yep.
our normal is our normal, and boy, to find that space to where you could recognize that there is a better way. How did that happen? That had to be an epiphany. It had to be magic. It had to be a God thing. It had to be something, right?
It was all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started about, and this is true for many, many, many women. I'm not sure what the age is for men who figure it out, because there are plenty of women who have personality disorders as well. But for women, they tend to sort of have their epiphany about this in their early 40s, and that's what happened for me. I was in Italy. I was in Florence, Italy for a month. Early in my 40s, and I was in so much pain, I took a predator with me. He was all I could think about while I was there, even though he wasn't physically there. And I started reading about anything I could find, and somehow I happened upon an article written by a wonderful therapist by the name of Andrea Schneider. She does the show The Savvy Shrink on our network. And it was about narcissistic personality disorder, and I feel like I was just, got in the movie The Matrix, where you can put in a plug in the back of your neck and now you know how to fly a helicopter.
Right.
That's what it was. I went, oh my gosh, this is what I've been dealing with my entire life.
Oh my gosh.
And that started the journey of realizing what it does to your body, what trauma bonding is, what Stockholm Syndrome is, what this kind of abuse does, why you would be attracted to people that are this way, and how to do all of the hard work it takes to find them unappealing and not attractive.
Well, the predator, I'm guessing here, you obviously will know better than me, but the predators, I think, easily spot you, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're wearing a sign that says,
hello,
welcome.
Yeah, here's my neon sign, keys to my house, and my bank account. Have a nice day.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. They know how to suss out your wounds, just like I do as a highly empathic person. I can suss out someone's wounds, but mine goes into volunteering with mental health and having a therapy dog. That's how I manifest what happened to me with a predator, that they're sussing it out to take advantage of someone, not to help heal them, but to help wound them. So I always say we're two sides of the same coin.
Well, that's interesting to me, because I've always believed, and I absolutely don't know what I know about this, but I've always believed that we all have an addictive behavior at some level, and what we do with that, or what it does to us, just really kind of dictates where your life goes.
Very true, very true. And it's hard to have a healthy roadmap when all of your teachers growing up were so unhealthy.
Right.
You have to strike it out on your own, and you really don't. You just have no idea. Where do I turn? Where do I look? You just don't know. And so where people that have character disorders, not all of them, but the high dangerous narcissism, psychopathy, and sociopaths, They live in a fantasy land, which is their persona that they've created in order to fool people, ensnare people, and because they can't stand to live with actually who they really are. Narcissists care, and it's a deep wound. Sociopaths don't care, and psychopaths absolutely don't care.
Wow.
And, many of us live in kind of a fantasy land, but the other side of the coin with that, with highly empathic, wounded people, we live in a fantasy land too.
Sure.
That's why we believe these people, and we believe it's true love. And
we
think,
want to believe the good in people, right? I mean, that's
absolutely.
We have to have trust and all that, and it just comes to bite you in the fanny.
Yes, it does, in horrible ways, until you go, maybe, because you definitely go through a period where you blame all of the bad people that did this to you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Everyone should do that.
Don't you blame yourself,
But
though?
when that's the part I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you don't go to therapy and go, I was there too.
Yeah.
How did I play a role in this again and again and again? If you don't do that work, then you're going to be stuck in victim land and bitterness, and you're not going to achieve what a lot of people call post-traumatic growth, which is take a situation like this and turn it into doing something great. I mean, my whole podcast was created out of me being sexually harassed by a psychopath in a work situation.
Okay.
So my hat's off to him for doing what's called post-traumatic growth, because I did the work.
There you go.
And turned it into something amazing.
There you go. Was the trip to Italy, was that the trigger that helped you start to do the work?
Yeah, my father had passed away, who I was obviously very, very close to, and a wonderful, amazing human being. And I went to Italy really to grieve.
Okay.
And just that taking a trip and being so out of your element, there's a lot to be said for, and I've interviewed so many guests about, brain training and things like that.
Right.
There's a lot to be said for getting you out of your element, because it just kind of shocks your brain out of the groove that you've worked it into.
Yeah.
And that keeps you doing some of the same things you always do that aren't really healthy. So that, being in a different environment, a foreign country, and so on, along with, reading those articles and meeting all the people I did, was enough of a culture change and long enough time for me to get into a different space where I could actually heal.
Wow. And you have a service dog that helps you?
Well, actually, it's funny. He's a therapy dog, which is very different from a service dog.
Okay.
Therapy dogs are there for everybody else. So I have 2 therapy dogs, and we spent 7 years where I would go in and out of psych wards and mental health classrooms and schools, and he was there to help other people, so that the dogs have been cried, on, their necks have been full of tears for 7 years.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What a gift, huh?
Yeah, it's amazing. A couple of times I had been told, because there are HIPAA laws, so I'm not allowed to know patients' names unless they tell me and things like that. And I was just the person holding the leash. I wasn't the therapist.
Right.
But sometimes when we'd leave a hospital, one of the therapists would say, "My God, that person that you were sitting and talking to for the last half an hour has been violent and hasn't spoken to any of us on staff, all week." And they were the chattiest, loveliest person I'd ever encountered. And all because Miles, my dog, is just you can't not love him.
Right, right. I love
things like that make you just, ooh.
I got goosebumps on that one. That was, geez Louise. That was, wow. So you mentioned sexual harassment, bullying, I assume, in the workplace. Do you deal with people to help them through those kinds of traumas?
I do, in terms of doing a lot of shows about it, and then, of course, referring people to wonderful therapists wherever they are in their area. And we have a show actually now called The Empowered Whistleblower with a wonderful woman named Dawn Westmoreland. She actually went after the VA for workplace bullying and wrote a book about it. So I refer people to her.
Nice.
But just talking about it, that's been the biggest thing. People want to hear someone else who's been through it. And I'm not a therapist, I always come at things on my show from the patient perspective.
Sure, because you've been there, done that.
So I can share, I have shared more on that show than people really want to know, but I always find that, I'm interviewing a specialist of some kind, and, they can't necessarily share their personal history, but I can share mine, and that makes for a deeper experience on the show.
Absolutely right. I found that with my podcast. It's every once in a while I'll get somebody on that like you is just so articulate and so knowledgeable in their background and their expertise, and all of a sudden we're just talking about anything and everything like it's just it's you and me, and there's nobody else listening, and who cares? And,
exactly.
Oh my gosh, those are wonderful conversations.
Don't you get a high kind of when you hang up? You're like, this is why I do this. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely right. Oh my goodness. So you've been doing the network thing on your own for a while, right? The radio on your own, and then it developed into the network?
Yep. Yeah. The radio for 4 years, network for a year. Last year was If You Build It, They Will Come.
Sure.
And I wrote many checks and went, why am I doing this? Is this folly? Is this going to all fold? Like, what am I doing? And I don't even know what I'm doing. And this year is about, it's time for us to work on getting sponsorships and, that kind of thing. So far, so good.
Well, you've got such interesting topics on the network. I mean, one that first caught my eye just because of what's in the news, the mental health analysis on why mass shootings have become commonplace in America. I mean, talk about timely,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We don't sit on our laurels.
Yeah,
Everybody jumps on, as soon as the Me Too movement started happening in the way that it did. I know it was happening before it became such a public interest, but man, we had 3, 4, 5 shows immediately. One that I did several I did with just women, and then one that I did with all men to hear how it affected them. And
nice.
Just, there's so many of us, and it's like a family. So we all just cheer each other on, and good, you're doing that show about the shootings. Okay, awesome.
Because you're just jumping on it and making everything as relevant as quickly as possible to help people. You're not waiting around for the 11 o'clock news. You're on it.
Yeah, we're on it. We're all really intelligent, articulate people that care.
Yeah.
And I'd say one of the things, too, is we really try to stay away from sensationalism. It's hard not to get sucked into that. But as an example, I did a show with one of the Bill Cosby survivors, and it was during his first trial. And I made the decision at the time to not use his name in the title of the show.
Nice.
Because it made my guest more comfortable, and I just felt like I don't want to give him any more publicity, good or bad.
Exactly right. All of a sudden, then that makes it about him instead of why the guest is there.
Exactly. And that's probably, if I was owned by some other entity, I probably would have had to make compromises like that. And so far, because I own it myself, I don't have to make those kind of compromises. I can stay with what I'm comfortable with.
Good for you. I can't believe we're almost out of time. That's so frustrating. We might have to do this again. So,
no problem.
All right.
Anytime.
Cool. Thank you. So people want to get a hold of you, the network, where they can find all these incredible podcasts. They go to MHNR, Mental Health Network Radio. Is that right?
Mental Health News Radio Network.com. Or MHNR Network if they don't feel like typing, MHNRnetwork.com.
There you go. There you go. And folks, just check it out. I mean, in 8 minutes, you will go, oh my God, I got to make this one of my favorites because it's so fascinating. So hats off to you for doing the work and turning your experiences around to help other people in such a meaningful way. That's pretty huge. Pretty huge.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. I love your show, so I'm proud to be a guest on it.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week and continued success in changing lives.
Thank you.
Your 20-minute podcast with David Brower has been brought to you by Audible. You can listen to any of David's podcasts anywhere podcasts can be found, including iHeartRadio, the Spotify mobile app, and at davidbrowervo.com/your20-minute podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.